What's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing some Scareclaw test hands. So I'm really excited for you guys because this deck is actually suggested to me by one of my patrons, Gloomba. And this deck is an extremely fun deck to be able to play with. It can summon out all sorts of really awesome boss monsters like Scareclaw, Tryhard, which is an absolutely crazy cool card. And now that we finally had the Link 1, this deck is absolutely insane because as long as you open up a single Scareclaw monster, you have full combo. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like in your name, description of a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron. And definitely give Gloomba some love down in the comments down below for suggesting such an awesome deck. So let's get straight on into this one, guys. So this deck is super fun to be able to play because it's really easy to pull off because you're basically just summoning a single Scareclaw monster to your side of the field as your normal summon, and then linking into your Link 1, and then searching the field spell, which then gets you your copy of your Scareclaw Heart, which then will search a rival, and then it will bring back the monster that you linked off for your Link 1, which then you can go into Tryhard and use its effect, which is the basic combo of this deck, which is really, really cool, leaving a lot of room for hand traps in this deck to be able to go up against a bunch of meta decks. This deck will really be a fun rogue deck going forward, and it's just really cool to go first in this deck and then set up your copy of Tryhard. But you guys know it's dad rule number one that we gotta pile shuffle the deck, because if you don't pile shuffle the deck, you run the risk of bricking, even though all we need in this deck is to open up a single Scareclaw monster and we can go full combo. But now that we got the deck pile shuffle, let's go ahead and see what we can do for our first test hand, because this deck is super fun to be able to play. Let's go ahead and give the deck a quick little shuffle and see what we can do. Like I said, if you open up a single Scareclaw monster, you have full combo. So we're gonna open up with a copy of Nobleman Designator because I don't want to get hand trapped as I'm going through my plays. DD Crow, Ash Blossom, a copy of Acro, and a copy of Sklash. So this is a really good opening hand as long as you open up between 1 to 2 hand traps and a way to prevent your opponent from hitting you with a hand trap. You're going to be totally fine in this deck. The copy of Sklash is really good because it gives us an additional negate, and it's really good to go ahead and have this card in our hand. So what you're going to do with this deck is a very, very simple combo, but very effective. So we're going to go ahead and normal summon out any Scareclaw monster. Could be any single one of them, could be Balone, could be Heart, could be Acro, any of the ones that you want to have, Asta, any of the ones that you have in the main deck. You just normal summon to your side of the field and then immediately link it away for the new Scareclaw Lightheart. Now Lightheart is very interesting as it just takes a Scareclaw monster plus a Vista Starfrost or a Vista Starfrost monster to summon this card. And for this card's link summon, you just have to link that card, and you can only use monsters in the main monster zone as a material. And if this card is link summon in the extra monster zone, then you can add a primitive planet from your deck to your hand, which is the field spell. And if you control Vista Starfrost, then you can special summon this card from your graveyard, and you can only use that effect once per duel. But we're just going to go ahead and summon it to our side of the field in the extra monster zone, and then search our field spell from our deck to our hand, which is extremely important to go ahead and grab that card, because this card is actually the searcher of the deck, because it has the ability when it's activated, you can add Scareclaw monster or a Vista Starfrost from your deck to your hand, and then monsters your opponent control lose 100 attack and defense for each defense position monster on the field. And if there are 3 more defense position monsters on the field, you can target a card your opponent controls and destroy it, which is a great effect. So we're gonna go ahead and activate our field spell to be able to grab from our deck to our hand our copy of our Scareclaw Heart. Scareclaw Heart is the card that I always search if I don't open with it, because it's going to get us a search of the Monster Reborn. Now we have already used the normal summon, but all of our Scareclaw monsters have the ability that you can special summon them from your hand to your main monster zone adjacent to another Scareclaw monster that you control or in the same column. So for example, if I have my copy of Lightheart here, I can special summon my copy of Scareclaw Heart directly below it to be able to special summon that card to the field. But if I had this card here, like the copy of Acro, I can then special summon it here or on the other side of it because it's adjacent to an existing Scareclaw monster. So that's very important to keep in mind as you play this deck. So I'm going to go ahead and make the copy of my Scareclaw right card. And once you make that card, it's going to give you a search of a spell or trap from your deck to your hand. I always search out the copy of Arrival if I don't already have it in my hand, because once you have your copy of Scareclaw Arrival, you can basically go full combo, which is really cool. So once we get our copy of Scareclaw Arrival, this card is actually the in-archetype Monster Reborn. It has the ability you can target a Scareclaw monster or a Vista Starfrost in the graveyard and special summon in defense position. And if a Scareclaw Link monster you control would be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can manage to discard from the graveyard instead, basically being a Return of the Dragon Lords as well as a Monster Reborn. So then we're going to activate the copy of Scareclaw Arrival to bring back our copy of Acro to our side of the field. It could be any Scareclaw monster that you bring back to the field that you link summoned for the copy of Lightheart. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and make a link 3 because our Tryheart requires 3 monsters to actually make it. So we're going to go ahead and link away all 3 of these monsters to summon out our copy of Scareclaw Tryheart in the extra monster zone. Now that's a really important play because this card actually is insane, because this card is a walking Monster Reborn and has a really insane effect. If you guys have never read this card, let's take a quick look at how powerful this card is, because I actually play this in my Tri Brigade as well, because this card is absolutely insane. It has the ability that takes 3 effect monsters to make this card, and it must be link summoned, and all face-up monsters on the field are changed to defense position. It's unaffected by the effects of defense position monsters, and then once per turn, if this card is in the extra monster zone, which is where you're always going to summon this card because of its arrows, you can target a level 3 Scareclaw monster in the graveyard and special summon it. And if you do, add a Scareclaw monster from your deck to your hand. So we're going to go ahead and use that ability because you get a Monster Reborn and a search off your copy of your monster. Now the really cool thing is all of the level 3 monsters actually have buffs for your copy of your Tryheart, where your copy of Acro has the ability to boost up your copies of your Scareclaw monsters in the extra monster zone by 300 attack for each defensive position monster that you control. So this card is already going to go up by 33 by the effect of the copy of the Acro. Now I always summon this card here because if I want to summon to an adjacent zone, I still have my extra monster zones freed up, which is really cool because this card is pointing straight down to these zones, which is why I usually like to summon the copy of Acro in the middle or the copy of whatever I'm bringing back to my side of the field right here. Now at this point, you can search out either your copy of your Balone, or you can search out your copy of Astra. You can search out either one of these cards from your deck to your hand, or if you didn't use the copy of your Acro, you can search that card, and depending on the one that you get depends on the buff that you get. So let's take a quick look at which buff you want to get, depending on what your matchup is. Because if a Scareclaw monster in the extra monster zone, this card inflicts piercing damage, so this card is good against decks that don't play a lot of link monsters. If you want to grab the copy of Astra, it has the ability that your Scareclaw monsters in the extra monster zone can attack a number of times each battle phase up to the number of defense position Scareclaw monsters that you control with different names. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the copy of the Astra, and I'm going to special summon that card to my side of the field, which is going to help out a lot just to be able to get that card on the field, because I'm going to special summon it in a zone adjacent to the copy of Acro, which now at this point, since I have 2 monsters on the field that are in defense position, this card is going up to 3,600, which is really cool. The other really cool thing about this is that your copy of Acro actually stacks, so if you have multiple copies of Acro on the field, your copy of your Tryheart will actually get a boost from each one. For example, with just 1 on the field, you're going to gain 300 for each defense solution monster that you control, but with 2, it'll be 6, and with 3, it will be 900, which can be a lot of attack points that this card can gain. This card can get absolutely massive. So at this point, now that we have our copy of Scareclaw Tryheart on the field, you're going to set your copy of your Scareclaw Splash. I usually play around the Mech Knight, and I just set it to an adjacent zone that I'm not using, and I can also set the copy of Crossout Designator in the deck. Now if you guys would like to check out the deck profile, as always, it is down in the description down below, but we're going to go ahead and set the copy of the Crossout Designator. And with this card, you can play any hand trap that you want to play in the deck to be able to stop with your copy of Crossout Designator. But in this deck, we play a bunch of hand traps to be able to counter the opponent, while also being able to protect ourselves with copies of our Crossout Designator. For example, at the activation of our field spell, we could have stopped our opponent with an Ash Blossom with a copy of the Crossout Designator, or if we brought back a monster from the graveyard, when we targeted it, they could have used the DD Crow, and since we do play DD Crow in the deck, you can then use the copy of our Crossout Designator to protect our play. So we're going to go ahead and set that to our side of the field as well, and pass over to the opponent. Now, at this point, I have a Banish, and I also have the copy of the Ash Blossom to be able to stop the opponent as as well, which is pretty good from stopping them from searching the deck. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and draw for turn, just to say that we went into the next turn, and we're going to draw into a copy of Crossout Designator, which is going to be pretty good to be able to go ahead and get from our deck to our hand. And it doesn't really matter at this point what you do, because you're basically locking down the opponent already. So you have plenty of plays that you can actually go for with this deck. You have your copy of your Crossout Designator to be able to stop the opponent, and at this point you can basically just attack with your copy of your Tryhard. You can also link away one of your copies of your monsters. For example, if you want to link away the copy of your Acro for a copy of Lightheart just to get it on your side of the field, you can link it away to get your copy of Acro in the graveyard to be able to use your copy of Tryhard to bring it back to your side of the field, and then search from the deck a copy of Balone, which is going to get you all of the buffs that you have in the deck. And then you have 3 monsters in defense position, so it's going up to 3,900, which is pretty good. And since we now have 3 monsters that are in defense position, we had the effect of our copy of our primitive planet that we can actually pop a card on the field as well, which is pretty good. So this is basically the way the deck plays, but let's go ahead and do another test hand and see what we can do. Because once you establish this field, you have a really good setup. I didn't mention the effect of Splash, but Splash is also really good because it has the ability that once per turn, you can target a Scareclaw monster, or if it's a Starfrost you control, and can attack while in face of defense position this turn. And if it does, you apply the defense points of that monster, so you can target a card like your Acro, which is going to be in defense position, and attack with a 2,000 defense point monster, which is pretty good. It also has the ability when your opponent activates a card or effect while you control a Scareclaw monster, then you can, in the extra monster zone, you can send this card to the graveyard to negate that effect, which gives us an additional negate. So we can stop hand traps. We also opened with 2 hand traps to be a negate with this card, and you have the copy of Ash Blossom, so we basically have 2 negates, a banish from graveyard, and we were protected from at least 1 hand trap with this particular hand. I'd say that's actually pretty good. This is really, really fun. I'm actually really glad that Gloomba suggested this deck, because this deck is actually really wild and pretty easy to play as well, which is really nice, because basically as long as you open any Scareclaw monster, you have full combo. So you can just normal summon 1 out, link it away for Lightheart, search the field spell, activate the field spell, search your copy of your Scareclaw Heart, special summon it to the field, then use its effect to search a rival, activate it, bring back a monster from the grave, link for Tryhard effect, bring back a monster from the grave, and search the deck, which gets you a full field like we did with the first combo. And that's actually really cool to be able to memorize a combo so easily to heart with this deck. So let's go ahead and shuffle it up again and see what we can do. We're not even going to worry about pile shuffling with this deck, because again, as long as you open a single Scareclaw monster, which we play 12 in this deck, along with the copies of our planet, which gives us an additional copy of 3 copies. So we basically play 15 monsters in the main deck, which is really, really cool. So let's go ahead and shuffle up the deck and see what we can do for our next test hand. So we're going to go ahead and cut the deck, and we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of our Scareclaw rival, which we already now have our Monster Reborn, a copy of DD Crow, a copy of our Ghost Bell, a copy of Balone, which we now have full combo, and another copy of DD Crow. This is actually pretty good because we can stop the opponent from touching the grave. We have a double banish, which is not once per turn, and we already have our Monster Reborn, so we can search out the copy of Splash instead to go for full combo. So let's go ahead and do that combo again. So for this time, we're going to normal summon the Balone, link it away, summon out our copy of Lightheart. Doesn't matter which zone you summon it to as long as it's in the extra monster zone. Use the effect, search our copy of our primitive planet, add it to hand, activate the primitive planet. This is a bread and butter combo of the deck that you're always going to do. Search the deck for a copy of our Scareclaw Heart, Reichart. Then once you summon out the copy of Reichart to your side of the field in defense position, I usually summon them all in defense position. I'm going to use the effect of our copy of Reichart to be able to search the deck for an additional spell or trap card that is either your copy of Splash, or you can even search out a copy of Straddle if you want to search out your copy of Straddle instead. Totally up to you guys. This one protects from targeting, and this one protects from negations, and can also let your monsters attack on defense, which is pretty good. But this card is also really helpful because it has the ability that you can target a Scareclaw monster, or if it's a Starfrost, in your monster zone in a face-up monster that your opponent controls, and your monster gains attack and defense equal to that opponent's monster's attack and defense, whichever is higher. And when an effect is activated that targets a Scareclaw, or if it's Starfrost you control, you can negate the effect, which is pretty good on a quick play spell. But I usually just grab the copy of Splash because it's a really good one of in the deck. So we're going to go ahead and search out that card. And then once we do, we're going to go ahead and use the copy of Arrival. Arrival will revive back our monster. And then we're going to link again, just like we did before, our 3 monsters for a copy of Tryhard. Tryhard will go off once you get these monsters in the grave. Bring back your copy of Balone. Your copy of Tryhard will also give you a search. Grab the copy of Acro, special summon it to the field. And once you do, you have full field, just like we did before, with also a protection from battle destruction and card effects with your copy of Arrival, which is pretty good. We're then going to go ahead and set the copy of our Splash, and then now you're going to pass over to the opponent with 3 hand traps in hand, your copy of Tryhard on the field to be able to switch everything into defense position, and then you also have both of these giving buffs to your copy of your Tryhard. This deck plays a little bit similarly to basically like Crusadia to me, where you're basically making your copy of Avermax on the field extremely easily, and then going in for a really big number, which is kind of cool, while also giving your big boss monster some buffs by using your smaller monsters, kind of like Crusadia, which is kind of cool. I really like that about this deck, because it's very familiar to me because I play Crusadia a lot, and it's just a really fun deck. So this one, we're going to go ahead and activate the copy of our Splash. Splash will go off, and they can protect our monster, and then we can also just let the opponent go, because everything's going to get switched into defense position, and then we're going to go ahead and draw for turn, which is a Vista Starfrost. Now this is actually really interesting to be able to get the copy of Vista Starfrost in our hand, because we have some really interesting plays that we can pull off with that card. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and link this card away for the copy of the Scareclaw Lightheart, which won't have an effect go off, and we're going to go ahead and use the copy of Tryhard to be able to bring back our copy of Balone, and then it has that ability that it can search from our deck to our hand a level 3, or actually has the ability to add a Scareclaw monster from our deck to our hand. So I'm going to go ahead and use the ability to bring out a copy of Rykart this time, because I have a really interesting play to show you guys now that we've drawn into Vista Starfrost. So I'm actually going to add a copy of Scareclaw Rykart from my deck to my hand, and then I'm going to special summon it out to my side of the field in an adjacent zone. Then its effect will go off and search a copy of Arrival, which is going to help us out a lot to be able to add that card from deck to hand, because it's going to get us into another play. We then shuffle up the deck, and once we shuffle up the deck, which I actually dropped a couple of the cards, but that's totally fine. We're going to go ahead and shuffle up the deck. These are actually new sleeves, relatively new sleeves, so they're still a little slick, but we're going to go ahead and use the effect to be able to search the deck for a copy of Arrival. You can then activate the copy of Arrival if you want to bring back your other copy of Rykart. And then you can use the ability of your Vista Starfrost to be able to target a monster on your side of the field and pop it like a copy of Lightheart to special summon out the copy of Vista Starfrost. Now once you summon out your copy of Vista Starfrost, you can then synchro summon using the Vista Starfrost and the copy of your Rykart to summon out a copy of Baron de Fleur. Now the Baron de Fleur will go to defense position, which is totally fine because now we have another negate, and it can pop a card every single turn, which is super good in this deck. I really like that play to be able to summon out the copy of Baron de Fleur, or instead of summoning out the copy of Baron de Fleur, you can set up an even crazier board by leaving the copy of Rykart on the field, summoning out the Vista Starfrost, and then synchro summoning using a copy of the Balone and the copy of the Vista Starfrost, depending on your matchup, into a copy of Shinshin, which is really cool because the Virtual World QB basically works like a copy of our Macrocosmos. Because this card has the ability, any card sent from the field to the grave is banished instead, which is really cool. So after this, everything is getting banished, which is really insane. Kind of turns off the DD Crows, which is why I like to go for the copy of Baron, but being able to summon out the copy of our Shinshin is also a really good play, because summoning out the copy of Shinshin, depending on the matchup, is going to help us out a lot. So at this point, if you want to make a Link 3, you can also make a Link 3 like making a copy of Tryhard. You can make a copy of an IP Masquerena using your monsters on the field, or you can even make a copy of Dark, since we do have a Dark monster, grab a monster out of the opponent's graveyard if they're playing Dark, which is really cool. So let's go ahead and do one more test hand and see what we can pull off for one more test hand, because this deck is really, really good, and it's just a really fun deck to be able to play. I really like this deck and can't wait to see what they do with this deck in the future, because just with a little bit more support, I could really see this deck being meta, which is really insane because it's just really good. Because all you need is maybe like one more main deck monster and maybe a Link 2 that searches a monster from the deck, and you can get some really insane plays. Even some more spells and traps because your copy of Rykart can search them from the deck, which is really cool. So let's go ahead and shuffle up the deck and see what we can do for one more test hand, because this deck is really fun to be able to play and super consistent. So let's go ahead and shuffle it up and then see what we can do. So we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Infinite Impermanence, Ash Blossom, we already have 2 negates, a copy of Primitive Planet, a copy of Splash, and finally a copy of Effect Veiler. So this is a really interesting hand. This is a little different because we do already have the copy of Primitive Planet, and we are having to rely on that to be able to get to a monster, which is a little bit unfortunate. If we were going second, we would get another hand trap, which is totally fine, but we can outlast the opponent with this particular setup. So what we're going to do is go ahead and activate the copy of Primitive Planet, and I'm going to do the same thing that we did before, and then search out the copy of the Rykart directly from my deck to my hand. So once we search that card from deck to hand, I'm then going to normal summon it to the field, and once we do, I'm then going to link it away for a copy of our Lightheart. Lightheart will go off and search another copy of Primitive Planet so we can use it as a searcher for the next turn, and then we have 4 negates in the hand, which is going to make it so we can last till the next turn, which is going to be really easy with this setup. With a copy of Splash set and then 3 monsters in the hand, you have a really easy setup to deal with the opponent, which is nice because you have a monster negate, a copy of a card that's going to stop them from searching, and then a copy of another monster negate, which is really good, that we can just set to the field to any column while also getting a search during the next turn. This is the only time in the deck where you open up the copy of Primitive Planet and not a monster that you do end up with not summoning the copy of Tryhard in the first turn, which does happen every so often, but if you don't draw into those cards, you're going to draw into hand traps and still be able to go off on the next turn. So we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Infinite Impermanence, and once we do, we have another hand trap in the hand that we can use. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and tag these cards out, and once you do, you can then search the deck for another copy of a Scareclaw monster, like a copy of Rykart, that can special summon itself to your side of the field. Search a copy of your Arrival, which is going to get you another play to be able to bring a monster back from the grave, like your copy of Rykart that's in the grave. Use the copy of Arrival, bring back the other copy of Rykart, and then link for a 3 for your copy of your Scareclaw, Scareclaw Tryhard, which is going to help us out a lot to be able to go in for that play. Now we do have the copy of Splash, we do have an Infinite Impermanence set, and we do have these other 2 cards in our hand with another copy of Infinite Impermanence to set. So in just a couple of turns, we have 5 negates, and everything's getting shifted to defense position, and we have battle protection for our boss monsters, so it's okay to play a little slower with this deck, which is totally fine, because even with a slowed down game state where this card is going to shift everything into defense position, you still got some really good plays. So at this point, let's go ahead and shuffle up the deck, give it a quick little shuffle, and then we're going to see what we draw for the following turn, which is going to be a cross-out designator to stop for hand traps, which is totally fine with this card. Unfortunately, with the cards that we have in the graveyard, we can't use the copy of our Tryhard because it only brings back level 3s. So that is something that you run into every so often with your copy of Rykart being a level 4, which is a little unfortunate, but it's totally fine because you can still go in for some really good plays. So I think that's going to do it for this one, guys, because this deck is super fun. It's really easy to be able to pull off some insane combos in the deck. If you guys would like to check out the deck profile, it is, as always, it is down in the description down below. But this deck is super fun to be able to play, and I'm really excited to see what they do with this deck in the future. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.